HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Panther's Prey, a Leo Maxwell mystery by Lachlan Smith. Read by R.C. Bray. Chapter 1. Not everyone who confesses is guilty. This is the case of a man who confessed to a crime he didn't commit. I turned and indicated my client, Randall Rodriguez, behind me at the defense table in a borrowed suit. Next to him sat my co-counsel, Jordan Walker. I went on, addressing the jury. After a childhood filled with unspeakable abuse, Mr. Rodriguez has spent his adult life on the street, in mental hospitals, or in jail. 3 times in the past 5 years he's appeared at one of the police stations here in San Francisco and asked to be arrested, just as he did in this case. Each confession involved a well-publicized crime, 2 murders, and a rape. Each time, the police proved he couldn't have committed it. But that was before he crossed paths with police detective Harold Cole. I drew the 14 jurors' attention to Cole, a balding, middle-aged man sitting at the DA's table beside the assistant district attorney. Medicated now, Randall was passive before his fate. The judge had determined his confession was voluntary, and she'd also found him competent to stand trial and assist in his defense. Jordan had worked wonders with him, but our client's assistance was more theoretical possibility than practical fact. One of his diagnoses was autism, another schizophrenia. His raw intelligence was remarkable, however. For instance, he'd beg me to clip the chess problems from the Chronicle and bring them to our meetings. Before we could discuss the case, he'd sit down with a chess set he'd constructed from scraps of paper. He began from the opening position and played a realistic game, complete with formal openings and sophisticated tactics, his fat, scarred fingers moving at lightning speed, delicately sliding certain slips of paper and plucking others up, until after 5 or 6 minutes, the pieces arrived in the formation of the problem. Then, rather than solve the puzzle, he'd move to the next clipping and start again. Wanting the jury to see a homeless man incapable of planning or foresight, I'd instructed Randall to avoid chessboards and jail. Jordan and I'd been prepping the case for weeks, day and night. It was August. Janelle Fitzpatrick had been raped in January, one of the first cases I was assigned when I came to work at the PD's office. When Jordan had arrived for her 6-month stint as a volunteer attorney, I'd enlisted her help, asking her to interview the cops who'd investigated Rodriguez's confessions in the past. 2 years younger than I was, she was a slight 5'4" with red blonde hair, a distance runner. She could get in someone's face when needed, but was accustomed to relying on her more than considerable charm. Most importantly, she was a worker, willing to put in the hours. I hadn't expected her to succeed, but she'd persuaded those ordinarily close-mouthed detectives to cross the so-called blue line. Based on this accomplishment, I asked her to help me try the case. After I'd laid out our defense in my opening statement, the grizzled DA, Mark Sines, called his first witness. This was the alleged victim, Janelle Fitzpatrick. She was young, blonde, single, and dressed more expensively than any of the 3 lawyers in the courtroom. She came from a wealthy family and worked at a downtown investment bank. At the prelim, Sines had presented only the testimony of the investigating detective, who'd nearly fumbled the case when I confronted him with the shocking fact that the victim had failed to pick out Rodriguez from a lineup on her first try. She wouldn't make the same mistake today. After they'd spent over an hour walking through every detail of the attack, most of which admittedly had occurred in near darkness, Janelle dramatically pointed out Rodriguez in the courtroom as her attacker. Next, Sines asked her what had happened when she returned to the police department's southern station 3 days after the attack.
They called me to let me know they had a suspect who'd confessed, saying all I had to do was identify him. I thought I was strong enough, that I'd be able to handle that, but I was wrong. Being in the same room with him again, even separated by glass, sent me into a panic attack.
She stiffened slightly as she spoke these words and avoided looking at Rodriguez, showing the jury that the fear was still there, though under containment now.
I couldn't breathe. I had tunnel vision. When the light came on, I was so focused on not breaking down.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?